Hello everyone. This is Lori Mueller with StampinDreams.com, a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator coming to you from Lincoln, Nebraska on Sunday, June 6th. And I have a really cute project for you using the Snailed It bundle. And then I'm going to demonstrate to you how to create a really cool alcohol inked background. I'm not exactly sure how to label it, but it's kind of like a blob of using reinkers, alcohol, rubbing alcohol, and some pearlescent paper. But then I'm also going to show you what results come out of it using vellum and a window sheet. So welcome, welcome. So glad to see you. Hi, Julie. Hi, Betty, Susan. So good to see you. Thank you so much for joining me on Sunday. I am really sad to see the Snailed It bundle leaving. It is retiring. So if you haven't taken a look at the last chance list, I highly recommend that you do so, because if there's some of your favorites there that are not carried over into the current catalog, the big annual catalog, and also, you know, some accessories or dies, punches that you are really wanting but you haven't gotten yet, you want to take a look, because excuse me, there are a number of items that are listed at least up to 50% off. So that's a great savings to take advantage of for items that you had on your list and you haven't gotten yet. So take a look at the list. I do have it posted on my blog at stampindreams.com. Take a look at that list and check off your wish list items, and especially the ones that are on sale. So there's 10%, 25%, 50% items discounted, and it's great. I love it. So I am, oh my gosh, I'm kind of in a frenzy because I have been traveling, and I just got back late last night, and I hadn't had an opportunity to put this project together until this morning. So that goes to share that, you know, your projects don't have to be, you know, real difficult. I think I used a basic layout, but this inking technique using rubbing alcohol and one of our Stampin' Spritzers made it super easy, and you're guaranteed not to have two cards look identical. And while I was having fun, that's why I implemented testing out the waters using other products that we offer outside of the pearlescent paper. This pearlescent paper is beautiful by itself. It is a thinner type of paper, but it has a really pretty pearl, some shimmer to it that can make your projects, whether they're die cuts or used as layers on your projects, really, really pretty. So I am excited to share this idea with you. I hope you are too. Hi, Carol, Marilyn, Chris. So good to see you. Thank you so much for joining me. So I think one more Stampin' Up! News announcement. You have until June 14th to take advantage of earning $25 extra Stampin' rewards. What that means is normally a workshop or a pool of orders that you put in together as one. If your order reaches $250, and it can be a single order, it can be a group of friends who are putting in an order using a host code that I can provide you, or even me as a demonstrator. All demonstrators get this great perk as well. But if your order reaches $250, normally it's only $25 in Stampin' Rewards. But now through June 14th, you get an additional $25 in free product. So that's a total of $50 in free product. So if you haven't taken advantage of this, contact me and I would love to visit with you. We can get some girlfriends together real quick, and I can, you know, give you all the details on how you can maximize the most out of a Stampin' Up order. So it's been fun. I am guilty of doing it myself, so I know I've helped a number of ladies and stampers take advantage of this promotion. So you really don't want to pass it up because it doesn't come around very often. And $50 in free product with a nice size order is awesome. It's very, very rewarding. So, but on that note, I think we're going to get started with our stamping project using the Snailed It bundle. So let's get started. Right, so let me get my everything lined up here for you so that you are able to see nice and clearly. There we go. All right. So what we have today, we're going to use the Snailed It bundle, and it is found on page 54 and 55 of our mini January through June mini catalog. And there's a ton of samples right here. And then all of the products that go with that suite are on page 55. And so here is the bundle. And then there's coordinating baker's twine, some embellishments, and then some really pretty paper. I worked at my project trying to implement some of this paper, but I thought it looked better without it this time. So I did not implement any of the designer series paper, although it is super, super cute. And I love the dies, mainly because there's a number of them that you can use outside of this stamp set. So for instance, this little postage stamp die is adorable, and it houses any of these images right here. So you can stamp directly onto it, right there and through there. And then also this little fun envelope. And I had die cut some of these envelopes in just plain cardstock like this, and so you can leave it open and tuck in a little note and put it on your creation, whether it's a scrapbook page or a card. And then you also have dies that coordinate with the images. So for instance, this one right here works with this one right here, so backwards right there. And then, you have your little bubble sentiment, all sorts of fun characters or images that are useful outside of the images themselves. So some of these shapes are just for the images, but then you have some that you can mix and match with other projects. So this is what I'm focusing on today. And I love it. It's been a lot of fun. I've created a number of projects, but of course now that I'm thinking about it, I didn't bring them with me. So our project is going to be this one right here. And again, I'm using the really fun mushroom the gathering of mushrooms right there. And I did use some Stampin' Blends to color, with exception of the dots in this mushroom. Since we don't have a Stampin' Blend in Blushing Bride, I brought in my Stampin' Right marker and colored those in. So it's a great way to kind of coordinate both our Stampin' Blends and our markers. Now I did bring in some Blushing Bride and embossed it with the textured embossing folder, and then also too matted my background that I'm going to share with you, the alcohol technique, rubbing alcohol. And I don't know if you can see the shimmer right there. That shimmer transferred from the pearlescent paper that we're going to use. So you don't see as much of the shimmer on the plain piece of paper, but it does transfer over onto the card, which I think is really super cool. Now, because of this suite, there are the two baker's twine, and so we're going to use the Blushing Bride one, and you get a lot in that spool. And I'm going to create a double bow, a double layer of bow in one, and this is the only thing that's really popped up on there, but otherwise I think it turned out really cute, and I just like the abstractness of the watercolor look of the background. So I'm excited. All right, so why don't we get started? And we are going to need these following pieces. So I have my basic white thick, and it's your basic 5.5 by 8.5, scored at 4 1/4. So I can go ahead and do that right now. And bring in my bone folder, like that. And then we'll have a real red matted layer that measures 3 7/8 by 4 5/8. We'll have our basic white piece that measures 3 3/4 by 4 1/2, and that'll just map perfectly on there. We'll need a scrap piece of basic white, and I have one that's 2 5/8 by 2 3/4. It was a scrap piece, but it's going to be for the die cutting of our postage die right there. We have a piece of Blushing Bride that measures 5 1/2 by, let's see, this one's 3/4 of an inch. So 3/4 of an inch. And then we are going to need a piece of the pearlescent paper that is going to be the same size as our basic. So 3 3/4 by 4 1/2. And it is the identical size as my basic white for here. All right, so that's what we're going to use today. Now, because of the use of a liquid more than just stamping, we're going to need some drying time. So we're going to do the background first, and while we are working on the remainder of the card, this will have some time to dry. Okay, so what we need, I'm going to bring in my little, oh my gosh, my layering pad. The name has escaped me. I'll think of it here in just a second. And I'm using it as, just a base to work with. I do have a piece of a paper towel. I have reinkers. I have Real Red, Blushing Bride, and Daffodil Delight. And so I'm going to go ahead and take the caps off of those. Because I'm using rubbing alcohol, it's going to dry fairly quickly. So I'm using rubbing alcohol that I have put into my spritzer, which, oh, it's sitting over here. So I filled my Stampin' Spritzer with rubbing alcohol, and have gone with that. I thought this was my, I'm missing my, well, I hope that's the one. Oh, it's right here, right under my nose. Gosh, I hate that. Everything is always under my nose. I can never see plain as day. I've marked this one with some old washi tape to designate that as my alcohol fluid that's in there. So that you can get this at your local store. It's no big purchase or anything. And I will remain having alcohol fluid in here, rubbing alcohol. And you can empty it and fill it with, water if you like, if you have a limited number of these. But these also are great for with water or rubbing alcohol, that you can put droplets of ink in here and create a spritz of whatever color you're looking for as well. So I have my reinkers, and I'm going to set them aside here. I'm going to spritz, oh, not my basic white. You don't want to spritz your basic white. You want to spritz the pearlescent paper. But I'm going to have this very close by. So I'm going to spritz this, make certain I have it facing downward, and I'm going to give it some good dousing, like that. Now I'm going to come in and you're going to have to hold the paper from bowing because of the wetness of it. It will start bowing a little bit, and I'm going to just kind of go around, and I'm giving them about 3 drops each. And I'll kind of, now you want to pick it up, and because it started drying so quickly, I'm going to douse it again, and then I'm going to get it to run together, sort of, because when I mush it with the basic white paper, it'll spread a lot more. I'm going to go ahead and there, help it run just a little bit faster. And like that. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to kind of leave it like that. I'm going to bring in my basic white, and I'm going to layer it over top, and I'm going to smush it over top of that, like that. And you can kind of see it soaking through, and you'll pick it up, and you'll have actually 2 results, because I am planning to use this piece on another creation, and it'll maintain its pearlescent look. I just need to let it dry. And then my basic white layer, I don't know if you can see how that pearlescent glimmer, shimmer has transferred onto this piece. And so I have 2 results, but it's just super easy peasy. You just want to make certain that you kind of work a little bit quick. And you saw me, it started drying. I just added a little more spritz of the rubbing alcohol and worked the magic that way. So you have your opportunity of using up and down, or or flipping it to whatever your creation is going to result in. Now I wanted to share with you what my results look like, and I can set that aside too. But my results, wipe that all down, from vellum. I just had a scrap piece of vellum that I did the same thing, but it really started curling. But I do like my end result. You have to work fast. Vellum with any type of moisture, or even like the heat gun, will force it to start curling pretty quick. Now, of course, you won't be able to reuse this piece. Like I said, I had printed something on it, and it was sitting in my scrap bin. But this was the end result of that product. So you could use vellum as an opportunity to create the same type of background. Now, with my original card, here is the dried piece of, so you can kind of see here and here, it was over this way. So now I can use that as a background for something else. And it's got a ton of shimmer. And then the last one, I used a window sheet. And I got, I tried it several times to see if I could get a subtle look. So the first time I did it, I didn't really get them to mix, it looks like here. So you can really see where I put all of the droplets of my reinker. All right, so then the next time I brought it in and I doused it even more with the rubbing alcohol, and it really gave me a watercolor look, right? And so This one really took the longest to dry because I had heavily doused the window sheet with rubbing alcohol. Now, because this was a window sheet, I thought, well, there's still a bunch of residue on the window sheet. And so I went ahead and brought in another piece of cardstock. But you can tell, so here's a little tip. You do want, if you want to try the window sheet, you do want it to be the exact same size as the work surface that you are using for your creation, because I just used a scrap piece of window sheet and you can see the lines. So this was the width of my window sheet, and this ink was carried over onto my pad here. So you want to avoid, having lines, and I can kind of even see them right here, the lines that were drawn, but I have since gotten the right size window sheet to match up with the same layer that I wanted the ink to transfer to. But I really, I could actually trim this off and still use it. So I really liked the second rendition. So this was the first rendition. It's kind of like stamping. You can fully ink up your image, stamp off, and get the second rendition. Or, if you ink up your image and the first stamping, it gives you this type of, full color, and then this is the second rendition. So I really like that one. So I'm going to use that one in a future project. And then I thought I'd try it one more time with the right size window. And again, I got a full watercolor effect. And it was just a little bit more than what I was looking for, but I'm still going to work with it. I think a window sheet is still a good option for this particular technique. So there's 3 different ways that you can create this background. So hopefully you'll find one of those more pleasing to you than the others. So while the background is drying, we are going to go ahead and ink up our postage stamp. Now I've gone ahead, I showed you the measurements. I've already gone ahead and die cut this particular piece. So we're going to go ahead and stamp on it using the little mushroom gathering there and Memento. And the reason I'm using Memento is because I'm using our Stampin' Blends. And while I'm thinking about it, so I don't accidentally knock these over, I'm going to put the lids back on my reinkers and set those aside. All right, so let's ink up the mushroom collection using Memento. And when I have a bigger block, I like to take my ink to the image instead of the other way around. And I'm using a bigger block because it allows me to see beyond my die cut to make certain that I am centering and positioning it without any hindrances of the borders of my block. So if you use a block that's about the same size, sometimes it can be a little deceiving for placement of your image. All right, so that worked out well. Set that aside. And then I'm going to bring in my Real Red and my Hello, and I'm going to go ahead and ink that up and put it in the corner. And I'm just going to do a real light tap, 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 and put my seeing eyeballs in. And we are hopefully centering that or making it straight. Oh, yes. Nice, nice. Okay. Set that aside. And now we are ready for coloring. So I used the colors based on the Designer Series paper. So in the pack, this was one of the patterns. So this was the front, or well, one side is all hearts, and then we have this side. And this is where I got my color scheme for the mushrooms. So I'm using Real Red for the large mushroom, and I'm going to bring in some shadowing. So I'll come in with my thick, dark Real Red and give it some shadowing like this. All right, and I'm not very neat about it because I'm going to use my light Real Red to fill in the rest of it. And I can drag the dark ink with it and fill in that way. So you don't have to worry about being, super precise and detailed the first go around. But if you want more dark shadows, you can always come in after you've filled in with the light color. So go ahead and fill in the rest here, and then hopefully you can kind of see the little shadow here, because I'm kind of visioning my sun coming from this direction and coloring accordingly. Now I am going to do the underside as well, and I try not to color over top of the Memento ink, the black, a whole lot. I mean, it is built or generated to refrain bleeding, but after a certain amount of coloring over top of it, it will break down and start bleeding if you're doing a lot of coloring near that stamped image. All right, so I'll bring that in, and I chose to use Daffodil Delight, and I'm going to give it some dark highlights on the lines right here and bring in the light coloring for the rest of it. This gives it a little dimension and some nice, I think I went dark underneath there. I think I'm going to fill that in with dark under here. Give it, because the shadowing typically from underneath the mushroom. There we go, like that. Now my bottom one, I did bring in Bermuda Bay and gave it some highlights of color on the lines, and then I colored the rest of it with Daffodil Delight. I don't know if that was a smart move, because it does, you can blend your colors. They don't have to be of the same shade, but you can blend other colors together with each other to create new colors or tones. For instance, like fall, there's Cajun craze and red and yellows and oranges that you can blend together to come up with deeper, rich, different colors that are not offered as a marker or cardstock or anything like that. So don't be afraid to mix colors when you're shading. In fact, that's almost encouraged. Okay, get that. And then I brought in my So Saffron light. Or Daffodil Delight. Sorry, Daffodil Delight is what I'm using, not So Saffron. And then we'll get under here. Just add a little character and fun. And then the last are the stems, and I used Smoky Slate Light, the light one, to do the stems of each of the mushrooms. And one of the things that I'm going to point out, because I had forgotten until, right before, don't forget the rest of this mushroom stem. I totally overlooked it, and it was the last second thing before I started this online class for you. So I'm glad I saw that, but otherwise, I don't know, I didn't notice it right away. And I'm not being very particular about how I end the bottom of the mushrooms, like that. And you could come in, if you wanted a little bit of shading, add a little bit of shading off to this side. And along the stem here. Okay, looks great. Last but not least is some old olive for the grass, and I think I'm gonna use the bullet end of it and just outline the sprigs here. Nothing fancy. And there we have it. We're all done with that. So I could go ahead and add some Stampin' Dimensionals to our little center focal image. And if you wanted, you could even go a little bit further and stamp it again, and you could die cut, or not die cut, cut out that part of the mushroom and then pop it up on top of that. And now one thing that I see I had forgotten is to bring in my Blushing Bride to color in these little polka dots. So no worries, we're not stamping, so we don't have to worry about going over the bumps of the dimensionals that are underneath, but there we go. Add that in there. All right, so let's take a peek at our, oh, I know, we're gonna, we need to emboss our Blushing Bride using the Tasteful Textile embossing folder. So we'll do that, and then I'll give it another minute for our watercolor layer to dry. All right, so bring in the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, and we only need the main base plate, number 1. We're going to use the embossing folder with our cardstock on the inside, and then our embossing folder plate here. And that will run right through, nice and smooth. All right, set that aside. I just love this Tasteful Textiles. It's, you know, it's a subtle print. I thought about a couple of other different embossing folders because I've really felt that this card needed some texture along with the abstract background. And this was the best one because it wasn't so loud and bold and, you know, obnoxious, I suppose you could say. All right, so now let's bring in our watercolor layer. And it is a little bit damp, but it's, you could take your heat gun and give it a light blast of the low heat to continue drying it. But didn't that turn out really cool? I just love it. So we're going to go ahead and add this to the Real Red matte layer. And I'm going to use liquid glue. You can use Stampin' Seal, the regular or the heavy duty, the plus. All right. And plus you do want to put it in the center so that way you get it to lay flat. And I might lift that up and add just a smidgen more to ensure that my bubbles aren't gonna show through. There we go. That works perfectly. All right. Next up is to adhere it directly to my card front. But here I want to test the waters to see what direction I would like that to sit. And you can reposition your focal point. And I really like that yellow out there because I have a feeling if I went this direction, I would lose a lot of that Daffodil Delight, as well as a lot of, you know, I want some more of that. So I think I'm going to leave it this direction. Don't you think? I think that looks better. What do you think? And then I can bring this down here. And yeah. Is anybody on board with me? Oh, Jewel, thanks for joining me. For the watercoloring, this is basic white, but to transfer this coloring, I used pearlescent paper. So to get a full understanding, you might want to, after we're done, replay this video so that you don't miss all of the tips and tricks that I had that goes with it too. So, all right, I think I've decided I'm going to go this direction. And we're going to go ahead and add liquid glue. And I'm centering it in all directions. Now, granted, I have more white space at the top and bottom, which was kind of done on purpose. But it all stems from a scrap piece. And it was my basic white that was my scrap piece. And then I just work around it. You know, no sense trimming it and doing all that other stuff. And then you can adhere this. Now, the other thing too, you do have two views or textures to choose from with most of our embossing folders. So this was one side, and then this is the other side. So you can kind of see the raised versus like the indent. And now that I'm seeing this, because I did the raised on this one, now I'm wondering, oh, I think I still like, oh, now I can't decide if you know what? We're going to change it up. We're going to go with this side on this particular card. You know, you don't have to make all your cards identical. That's what makes it fun, right? And I'm just lining it up flush from the top and bottom, and we're just pulling out a little bit of the color of the Blushing Bride that's in there, because I used the Daffodil Delight on the mushrooms. And we'll squish that over just a smidgen. There we go. And I didn't put adhesive all the way to the top just because these two layers kind of give it a little raised dimension, and I kind of wanted to keep it that way. So now we can remove our backings. And position that in place. And I think I'm going to come around. Oh, me, I could still do this centering, couldn't I? All right, I think I'll go about right there. All right, last but not least, we're going to bring in Blushing Bride, a bow, and I don't know, maybe that's like 6 inches or so. You could do about 7. So I'm going to make a bow using 2 strands or 2 layers per se of Blushing Bride. Oh, I want my tails to be a little bit longer, so we'll go this direction. And you can always, you know, undo it and adjust it however it works for you. All right. Oh, that's looking better. And whoops, pull on that so that they're even. Looks great. All right, bring them all together and snip. And now you can use either a glue dot, because your knot is pretty good size, but I'm going to go ahead and use liquid glue and see if I can get that bow to lay decently. There we go. And I'm going to add a little dollop of liquid glue there and set this in place right here in the corner. And there we have it. We have a fun background created with reinkers and rubbing alcohol, and our pearlescent paper. That paper is, not just for die cutting or layering. You can actually use it to transfer some fun abstract backgrounds. So here is a perfect example where no two cards are going to come out identical because of how you swirl your inks on before transferring. So, oh, I just love it. What do you think? Didn't that? Oh my gosh. And you can use any color combinations. If you wanted your mushrooms to be, Bermuda Bay and daffodil and, maybe some smoky slate, you could do that. You could do this with a floral stamp set. Can you imagine your scrapbook page? If you had a great big area in the center that you wanted to transfer, again, you would just need that size of piece that you are adding your ink to before smooshing it onto the scrapbook layer, the scrapbook piece. Oh my gosh, I am seeing lots and lots of ways of using this same technique for many types of creations. So, all right. I think we can flip back and share what you think about that project. It's kind of cool, right? Fun, and like I said, with the window sheets, if you prefer that look, I'm still gonna play around with that because I think it's an ideal one as well. The one thing about the window sheet is that you can actually rinse it and reuse it. And with the pearlescent or the vellum, now the vellum, I did find that I don't think you'll be able to reuse the layer that you put all your ink on just because of so much curling going on. But the pearlescent piece, you can reuse that in another project. And then, for each first rendition, you'll have a card, and then your second rendition, which would be that pearlescent paper, would be your second creation. So you can get double the creations going that method. But with your window sheet, you could mass produce. So if you were creating Christmas cards or you have a bunch of birthdays coming up, you can use the window sheet over and over and over. You just rinse it off, dry it, and start with the next project. So, but otherwise, I hope today's project inspired you to pull out those reinkers. That is another way of stamping and creating. So if you don't have reinkers in your stash, because you do need them to re-ink, to refresh your ink pads, we do have plain Stampin' Spots. There are mini ink pads that you can create into any color that make great travel companions. Just use the reinkers to make your own mini ink pads. But yeah, reinkers are an essential tool in your stamping stash. So I am so thankful that you joined me today on Sunday. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact me with a private message, an email. You can text me, call me. I'm open to all of those. Also, too, if you enjoyed this project, place a $35 minimum order using the host code that was on my work surface, and I will send you 4 card kits, and they are going to be 2 of each 2 designs. So there'll be 2 different designs, but you'll get to make 2 cards of each one. So, and just go to stampinDreams.com and hit the Shop Now button, and you're on your way. But until then, I am looking forward to sharing another great project with you next Sunday here at stampinDreams.com with Lori Mueller. Take care. Bye.